The phone rang at 3:47 a.m., and Sloane Mitchell answered with that drowsy certainty that someone had died. "Mrs. Callahan." The voice was female, professional, urgent. "Your husband was admitted to Portland Presbyterian Hospital 20 minutes ago. I need you to come immediately." Sloane sat up in bed, trying to process the 3 lies in that sentence. "Sorry, I think you have the wrong number. I'm not married and my last name is—" "You're Sloane Mitchell, number 503-555-0147. Yes, but then you're the wife of Garrett Callahan. Emergency contact. It's been in his records for 3 years. A pause. "Mrs. Callahan, your husband was in a car accident. Nothing serious, but we need authorization for some procedures. How long until you get here?" 25 minutes later, Sloane walked into Portland Presbyterian wearing an Oregon State sweatshirt over her cat print pajamas, her hair twisted into a lopsided bun, and the expression of someone who'd been abducted by bureaucratic aliens. Garrett Callahan was her boss. Garrett Callahan hated her, or at least pretended to hate her with impressive dedication. In the past 3 years as project manager at Callahan & Associates, his consulting firm, Sloane had developed a solid theory. Garrett kept her around solely to have someone to take out his chronic misanthropy on, and now, apparently, she was his wife. "Mrs. Callahan," a nurse waved near reception holding a clipboard. "What a relief you're here. We need you to sign here, here, and here. CT scan, X-ray, and clearance for the stitches on his forehead." Sloane looked at the forms as if they were written in ancient Sumerian. "Look, I think there's been a cosmic misunderstanding. I work for Garrett Callahan. I'm not married to him. We don't even date. He barely speaks to me without looking like he's chewing glass." The nurse blinked, then smiled with excessive patience. "Honey, I understand. You two had a fight. But now's not the time. He needs you." "We didn't fight. We're not—" "Sloane?" The voice came from down the hall. She turned. Garrett sat on a gurney with a dramatically bandaged cut on his forehead, his shirt torn at the shoulder, and that expression of someone who'd just woken from a dream about being chased by administrative sharks. At 38, he had the kind of irritating good looks that belonged on a whiskey billboard, slate-gray eyes that seemed to dissect your every thought, dark blonde hair always strategically disheveled, and a jawline that had probably been carved by some vengeful sculptor with a personal grudge against ordinary faces. He stared at her for 3 full seconds, then said with complete naturalness, "Hey, babe. Sorry I woke you." Sloane felt her brain do the mental equivalent of a tire blowout. "What the heck, Garrett?" She practically dragged him to a corner of the emergency room, away from curious ears. He stumbled slightly. Apparently the mild concussion was real, but recovered his balance too quickly for someone who was technically injured. "Can you explain?" Sloane hissed, crossing her arms. "Why I'm your emergency contact? Why am I in your records as Mrs. Callahan?" Garrett ran a hand through his hair, avoiding her gaze. "It's a long story. Executive summary. Now, 3 years ago, when you started at the company, I was in a weird place. Just dissolved the partnership with my brother. No close friends. Needed an emergency contact for health insurance, and you were convenient. Convenient? Efficient. Organized. Always have your phone on you." He finally looked at her, and there was something uncomfortably vulnerable there. "Didn't think I'd actually need to use it." Sloane took a deep breath. "And the part about me being your wife? That." Garrett scratched the back of his neck. "The system would only accept spouse as primary emergency contact. I was going to fix it later, but forgot? Forgot? Sloane, I manage 17 projects simultaneously. I can't remember everything, but you remember my cell phone number by heart." "Well," he shrugged. "Some things stick." There was a strange silence. Sloane realized they were standing too close, that she could see the silver threads near his temples, that the cut on his forehead made Garrett look strangely human. Then he said, "You came in cat pajamas. It's 4 a.m. I know. The corners of his mouth curved microscopically. "Didn't know you liked cats. There are many things you don't know about me, Garrett. Apparently," he tilted his head, "like the fact that you don't correct doctors when they call you my wife." Sloane opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "I tried. They didn't believe me." Garrett moved an inch closer. "Interesting." "What's interesting?" "That you got so worried when they called." His voice was lower now, almost amused. "Thought you'd leave me bleeding here." "I should." Sloane pointed a finger at his chest. Do you know how much trouble this could cause? What if I had to sign something serious? What if they think we're committing insurance fraud? What if? Garrett interrupted softly. You just stayed. Her heart jumped. What? As my emergency contact. We've been doing this for 3 years. He leaned against the gurney, crossing his arms, which made his forearm muscles ridiculously defined under the fluorescent light. Seems to work fine. Work fine? Garrett, I thought you died. Something crossed his face. Too fast to identify. And you came. Of course I came. Even though you're an unbearable boss and… She stopped. Wait, you're not going to correct the hospital? You're not going to tell them we're not married? Garrett shrugged. Too much work right now. They already cleared me with you here. If I start explaining, they'll keep me for 2 more hours with paperwork. You're using hospital bureaucracy as an excuse to keep pretending we're married. Exactly. That's insane. It's pragmatic. He grabbed his jacket from the chair back, wincing as he moved his shoulder. Can you give me a ride? The car is inoperable. Sloane stared at him. Really stared. Garrett Callahan, her boss of 3 years who never smiled, who corrected her in meetings, who made a point of saying her coffee was terrible, stood there in the hospital at 4:32 a.m., injured and vulnerable, and asking for a ride, after accidentally making her pass as his wife. And the worst part? The worst part was that Sloane was already reaching for her car keys. And in the parking lot, as they walked in silence to her Honda Civic, which had a coexist sticker she secretly found tacky, Garrett suddenly said, Sloane? Thanks for coming. She unlocked the car without looking at him. Next time, put your mom as your contact. My mom lives in Dublin. Then your brother. We don't talk. A friend? Silence. Sloane got in the car. Garrett did the same, moving with the careful precision of someone in pain but refusing to admit it. When she started the engine, he said, so quietly she almost didn't hear, You're the closest person I have, Sloane. It's weird, but it's true. And before she could respond, before she could process the wave of something warm and confusing that took over her chest, Garrett leaned his head against the window and closed his eyes. Sloane drove in silence through the empty Portland streets, with her accidental husband sleeping beside her, and thought, this is going to be one impossible Monday to explain. Sloane woke up to 17 missed calls, 9 texts, and the horrible realization that she'd driven her boss home at 5 a.m. and helped him up 3 flights of stairs because his building's elevator was broken. She also remembered, with the kind of clarity reserved for embarrassing moments, that she'd tucked him into bed like a child, and he'd mumbled something that sounded suspiciously like, stay. She hadn't stayed. Now it was 7:30 a.m. She had exactly 45 minutes to shower, caffeinate, and pretend last night never happened, and her phone was ringing again. What? She answered without checking the caller ID. Mrs. Callahan? An unfamiliar male voice. This is Dr. Patel from Portland Presbyterian. I'm calling to discuss your husband's discharge instructions. Sloane's eye twitched. I'm not, and we need to schedule his follow-up appointment. He'll need someone to monitor him for the next 48 hours due to the concussion. As his spouse, you're listed as… Listen, Sloane interrupted, pacing her tiny apartment in yesterday's cat pajamas. There's been a mistake, a big one. I'm not actually married to Garrett Callahan. I'm his employee, project manager. We share a office building, not a life. Pause. Ma'am, I'm looking at his insurance paperwork right now. It clearly states… I know what it states. He put me down 3 years ago and forgot to change it. I see. Dr. Patel's tone shifted to that special brand of professional skepticism reserved for people claiming insurance fraud. Well, someone needs to monitor him. Head injuries are serious. If you're unable to fulfill that responsibility… I didn't say I was unable, I said I wasn't his wife. Then who should I list as his primary caregiver for the next 2 days? Sloane opened her mouth, closed it. Remembered Garrett's face last night when he'd said, You're the closest person I have. Fine, she heard herself say. I'll do it. Excellent, Mrs. Callahan. I'll email you the care instructions. He hung up before she could correct him again. Callahan and Associates occupied the 3rd floor of a converted warehouse in Portland's Pearl District. All exposed brick and industrial lighting that screamed, We're creative, but also bill $300 an hour. Sloane arrived at 8:47 a.m. with her largest coffee and her best, I didn't just tuck my boss into bed last night face. The office was already humming. Her coworker, Marcus, intercepted her at the door. Is it true? He whispered urgently. Sloane blinked. Is what true? That you and Garrett are married. Jenny from accounting saw your name on some hospital form this morning when she was dropping off his insurance claim. She said it listed you as his wife. Sloane's brain short-circuited. How did Jenny get his insurance claim? He emailed it to her at 6 a.m. Apparently he's working from home today but needed to process yesterday's ER visit. Marcus leaned closer. So it's true? You're Mrs. Callahan? Absolutely not. It's a paperwork error. A 3-year paperwork error. Marcus, because that would explain so much. The way he always knows where you are. How he asked you to work late that time everyone else had plans. Why he personally approved your raise last year instead of going through HR like normal. We are not married. The entire office went silent. Approximately 14 pairs of eyes swiveled toward her. Good morning, everyone, Sloane said brightly. Lovely weather we're having. Very rainy, as usual, for Portland. In October. She speed-walked to her office and slammed the door. At 10:15 a.m., her office phone rang. Internal line. Garrett's extension. She stared at it like it might explode. It rang again. Callahan and Associates, Sloane Mitchell speaking. Very professional. Garrett's voice sounded rough, like he'd been gargling gravel. Considering you've seen me in a hospital gown, you were fully clothed except for your shirt being torn. Don't be dramatic. I'm concussed. I'm allowed to be dramatic. A pause. Did you get the doctor's call? You mean the one where he called me Mrs. Callahan 17 times and I had a minor breakdown? That's the one. Yes, Garrett. I got the call. Apparently, I'm your caregiver now. Apparently. Something rustled on his end. Look, I know this is weird. Weird. Weird as finding out your boss has been pretending you're married for 3 years. This is a full-blown identity crisis. I wasn't pretending. I just never corrected the assumption. That's literally the definition of pretending. Silence. Then, the doctor said I need monitoring. Every 4 hours. Someone has to make sure I don't, die in my sleep. Very reassuring. Can you come by tonight? Around 6? His voice dropped. I wouldn't ask if there was anyone else. And there it was again. That vulnerability that made her chest ache. Fine, Sloane said. But we're having a serious conversation about boundaries. Looking forward to it, wife. Don't call me that. Mrs. Callahan has a nice ring to it, though. Garrett, see you at 6. Bring dinner. I'm useless in the kitchen right now. He hung up. Sloane stared at her phone and wondered when her life had become a rom-com she never auditioned for. At 6:03 p.m., Sloane stood outside Garrett's apartment holding Thai takeout and seriously reconsidering her life choices. The building was nicer than she'd expected, one of those renovated industrial spaces with floor-to-ceiling windows and the kind of rent that made her monthly budget weep. She'd only been inside once before, last night, and she'd been too focused on keeping Garrett upright to notice the details. She knocked. "It's open," came Garrett's voice from inside. Sloane pushed through the door and stopped. Garrett's apartment looked like a hurricane had hit an architecture magazine. Papers everywhere. 3 laptops open on the coffee table. Empty coffee cups forming a small village on the kitchen counter. And Garrett himself, sprawled on the couch in sweatpants and an old college t-shirt, his hair sticking up in 7 different directions, the bandage on his forehead slightly crooked. He looked almost normal, human, not like the polished, perpetually irritated boss she saw every day. "You're staring," he said without looking up from his laptop. "You said you were useless in the kitchen. You didn't mention you'd turned your apartment into a disaster zone. I'm working. You're supposed to be resting." "I'm resting and working. Multitasking." He finally looked at her, and something shifted in his expression. "You brought pad thai. Lucky guess. It's my favorite." "I know, you order it every time we work late." She set the bag on the coffee table, moving aside 3 mechanical pencils and what looked like a half-finished Rubik's Cube. "How's your head?" "Feels like someone's using it as a drum." He closed the laptop. "But I'm not dead, so that's something. The bar is truly on the floor. It's been that kind of day." Garrett rubbed his eyes. "Did the office gossip reach critical mass yet? Marcus asked me if we were married before I'd even taken off my coat. Jenny from accounting apparently saw the insurance paperwork. By lunch, I'm pretty sure the entire building thought we'd been having a secret affair for 3 years. Sounds about right. You don't seem bothered by this. Should I be? He looked at her with those slate-gray eyes that always made her feel like he could see straight through her carefully constructed professional facade. People talk. Let them. Easy for you to say. You're the boss. I'm the project manager who's apparently been sleeping her way to the middle. Garrett's expression hardened. Anyone says that, you send them to me. Very chivalrous. Except it doesn't help when you keep calling me wife and making jokes about our fake marriage. Who says I'm joking? Sloane froze with a container of pad thai halfway to her mouth. What? Nothing. Garrett grabbed his own container, suddenly very interested in his noodles. Concussion talking, ignore me. But the air between them had shifted, charged, like the moment before a thunderstorm. Sloane forced herself to breathe normally. So, about those boundaries we need to discuss. Right. Boundaries. He set down his fork. You want me to correct the hospital records? That would be a start. And tell everyone at work it was a mistake. Yes. Remove you as my emergency contact. Exactly. Put us back in our neat little boxes. Boss and employee, nothing more. That's what we are, Garrett. He looked at her for a long moment. What if I don't want to? Her heart did something complicated in her chest. Don't want to what? Fix it. Correct the records. Go back to pretending you're just another employee. He leaned forward, wincing slightly at the movement. What if I like having you listed as my wife? What if the hospital calling you at 3 a.m. was the best mistake I ever made? Sloane's throat went dry. You hit your head. You're not thinking clearly. I've never thought more clearly in my life. His voice was quiet but intense. 3 years, Sloane. 3 years I've watched you handle impossible clients, fix disasters I created, stay late when everyone else went home. 3 years I've had your number memorized, your coffee order saved, your schedule synchronized with mine. And I told myself it was practical, efficient. Garrett. But then you showed up at the hospital in cat pajamas looking terrified, and I realized something. He set down his food, giving her his full attention. I didn't put you as my emergency contact because you were convenient. I put you there because even 3 years ago, some part of me already knew. Knew what? That you're the person I'd want. If anything went wrong, if everything fell apart. His eyes held hers. That you're the one I'd call. The apartment was so quiet Sloane could hear her own heartbeat. This is crazy, she whispered. We work together. You're my boss. This whole situation is a bureaucratic accident. Maybe. Garrett's mouth curved slightly. Or maybe it's the universe telling us something we've been too stubborn to admit. The universe doesn't work through insurance paperwork, doesn't it? He reached out, slowly, giving her time to pull away. His fingers brushed her wrist. You came last night, you didn't have to. You could have told the hospital to figure it out themselves. But you came. Because you were hurt. Because you care. His thumb traced a gentle circle on her pulse point. Admit it, Sloane. This thing between us, it's not just professional, it hasn't been for a while. She should pull away. Should establish those boundaries she'd mentioned. Should remind him about power dynamics and workplace ethics, and the 17 reasons this was a terrible idea. Instead, she heard herself say, even if that's true, and I'm not saying it is, what exactly are you proposing? Garrett's smile was slow and devastating. How about we start with the truth? No more pretending. No more excuses. The truth, Sloane repeated slowly. I like you, Sloane Mitchell. Have for longer than I should probably admit. And unless I'm completely misreading this situation, which, granted possible given the head injury, you might feel something similar. Her face was definitely on fire now. You're very confident for someone who needed help getting upstairs last night. Is that a yes? This is complicated. Everything worth doing is complicated. You sound like a fortune cookie. Concussion, he reminded her, grinning now. I get a pass. Despite everything, the absurdity of the situation, the risk, the complete insanity of entertaining this idea, Sloane found herself smiling back. You're impossible. I'm practical, Garrett corrected. We already have the paperwork, might as well make it accurate. Are you seriously suggesting we date to justify your insurance fraud? I'm suggesting we stop fighting something that's been building for 3 years. His expression sobered. But only if you want to. No pressure. No boss-employee power dynamic. Just us. Figuring this out. Sloane looked at him, really looked at him. The bandage on his forehead, the vulnerable honesty in his eyes, the way his hand still rested gently on her wrist like he was afraid she'd disappear. This was insane, reckless, completely irresponsible. One date, she heard herself say. One real, actual date. Not me monitoring your concussion or bringing you dinner because your doctor said so. A real date. Garrett's entire face lit up. Yeah? If it's a disaster, we blame the head injury and never speak of it again. Deal. He squeezed her wrist gently. Friday night? Friday night, she confirmed, her stomach doing backflips. But right now you need to take your medication and actually rest. Doctor's orders. Bossy. That's literally my job. He laughed and it transformed his face completely, made him look younger, lighter, like the weight of running a company had temporarily lifted. Sloane stayed for another hour, making sure he took his medication, checking his pupils per Dr. Patel's instructions, and pretending her hands weren't shaking the entire time. When she finally left, Garrett walked her to the door despite her protests. See you tomorrow, Mrs. Callahan, he said softly. Don't push it, she warned, but she was smiling. Too late. Sloane drove home in a daze, her wrist still warm where he'd touched it, her mind replaying every word of their conversation. She had a date with Garrett Callahan, her fake husband, her actual boss. This was either going to be the best decision she'd ever made, or the most spectacular disaster of her professional life. Probably both, she thought, and couldn't stop grinning the entire drive home. Friday arrived with the subtlety of a freight train. Sloane had spent the entire week in a state of low-grade panic, oscillating between "this is fine" and "what have I done" approximately every 47 minutes. She'd monitored Garrett's concussion recovery like a hawk, showing up at his apartment each evening with dinner, and leaving precisely 60 minutes later, because anything longer felt dangerous. The office gossip had reached fever pitch. Someone had started a betting pool on whether she and Garrett were actually married. Jenny from accounting was currently winning with her theory that they'd eloped in Vegas 2 years ago and kept it secret for tax purposes. Marcus had taken to calling her Mrs. Boss Lady until she'd threatened to reorganize his entire filing system, alphabetically by client middle names. And Garrett? Garrett had been infuriatingly normal, professional in meetings, courteous in emails, gave absolutely zero indication that he'd confessed his feelings while concussed on pad thai, except for the way his eyes followed her across the office, the small smile that appeared whenever she walked into a room, the coffee that mysteriously showed up on her desk every morning, exactly how she liked it. Now it was Friday at 5:47 p.m., and Sloane was staring at her closet like it had personally betrayed her. It's just dinner, she told her reflection. A casual dinner with your boss who thinks you're married to him, and also maybe likes you. Completely normal. Totally fine. Her reflection looked unconvinced. Her phone buzzed. A text from Garrett. Still on for tonight? No pressure. We can reschedule if you've come to your senses. Sloane typed back. I haven't had sense since I answered that hospital call. Pick me up at 7. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Looking forward to our first date, wife. Stop calling me that. Make me. She threw her phone on the bed and tried not to think about all the ways she could make him stop calling her that. Garrett showed up at 7:03 p.m., wearing dark jeans, a charcoal button-down with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, and an expression that made Sloane's stomach flip. You look... He stopped in her doorway, eyes traveling from her burgundy dress to her heels and back up. I've forgotten how to form sentences. Concussion side effects? Sloane side effects. He held out his hand. Ready? She took it, ignoring the spark that shot up her arm. Where are we going? You'll see. I hate surprises. I know. That's why I'm going to enjoy this. 20 minutes later, they pulled up to a small Italian restaurant tucked into a quiet corner of the Pearl District. The kind of place with actual tablecloths and candles, and only 12 tables total. How did you get a reservation here? Sloane asked as Garrett opened her car door. This place is booked months in advance. I may have mentioned to the owner that I was trying to convince my wife to give our marriage a real shot. Garrett. What? Technically true. He grinned, offering his arm. Plus, Marco owed me a favor. I helped him with his business taxes last year. You did someone's taxes as a favor. I'm a man of many talents. The restaurant was everything Sloane had heard about and never thought she'd experience. Soft jazz playing, warm lighting, the smell of garlic and wine and something baking that made her mouth water. Marco himself seated them at a corner table, winked at Garrett, and said something in rapid Italian that made Garrett laugh and respond in equally fluent Italian. "You speak Italian?" Sloane asked once they were alone. "My mom insisted, said it would impress women." He picked up his menu, eyes twinkling. "Is it working?" "I plead the fifth. That's American. Wrong legal system. You're impossible." "You've mentioned that before." He set down his menu, giving her his full attention. "But you're still here. Against my better judgment. All the best decisions are." They ordered wine, appetizers, pasta that Garrett insisted she try even though she protested she'd ordered enough food. He was right, of course. Everything was incredible. "So," Garrett said, twirling linguine on his fork with the kind of casual grace that should be illegal. "3 years we've worked together. What don't I know about you? Where do I even start? Favorite movie? The Princess Bride. Classic. Favorite book? Pride and Prejudice, but the Lizzie Bennet version where she's terrible at first impressions. Isn't that the original?" "Exactly." She took a sip of wine. "Your turn. What's something I don't know about Garrett Callahan, consulting extraordinaire?" He considered this. "I'm terrified of birds." Sloane nearly choked on her wine. "What?" "Birds. They're dinosaurs. Tiny flying dinosaurs with beaks and talons and absolutely zero respect for personal space. You're scared of pigeons. Have you seen their eyes? Soulless. They're plotting something." She was laughing now, really laughing, and Garrett was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite name. "What?" she asked, suddenly self-conscious. "Nothing. Just, I like that sound." "What sound?" "You laughing. You don't do it enough at work. That's because work is stressful. You're stressful." "Fair point." He leaned back in his chair. "I've been thinking about that, actually. About being stressful? About us working together. If this," he gestured between them, "becomes something real." Sloane's heart did a complicated dance. "And? I want to do it right. No power dynamics. No one thinking you're getting special treatment because we're dating. We're not dating yet. This is one date. Trial basis." "Right. Trial basis." His mouth quirked. "How am I doing so far?" "You haven't scared me off yet." High praise. "I'm serious, though," Sloane said, setting down her fork. "If this does become something, the office situation is complicated. I know. That's why I talked to HR yesterday." She blinked. "You what?" "Confidentially. Asked about the policy for relationships between executives and employees. Turns out as long as there's disclosure and you're not in my direct reporting line, it's allowed. We just need to file paperwork." "You researched company policy for a hypothetical relationship before our first date." "I'm thorough." He took a sip of wine. "Also, I wanted you to know I'm taking this seriously. Not just the concussion talking. Not just convenient paperwork. This." The sincerity in his voice made her chest tight. "Garrett, you can say no, Sloane. If this is too complicated, too risky, too much, I get it. We can go back to being boss and employee. Pretend this never happened. Can we, though?" She met his eyes. "I don't think I can unknow that you've had my coffee order memorized for 3 years, or that you quote Princess Bride, or that you're afraid of birds. Strategically cautious around birds," he corrected. "Right, my mistake." She smiled. "And I definitely can't unknow that you looked up HR policy before asking me out. Is that a good thing or a terrifying thing? Both, probably. Story of my life." Only after dinner, Garrett suggested a walk along the waterfront. Portland at night was all reflected lights on the Willamette River, the distant sound of street musicians, couples wandering hand in hand. They weren't holding hands, but they were walking close enough that their arms brushed occasionally, each touch electric. "Can I ask you something?" Sloane said, watching the lights ripple on the water. "Anything. Why did you really put me as your emergency contact 3 years ago?" Garrett was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. "Honest answer? Please. It was your second week. You were in my office explaining how you'd reorganized the entire client database because the old system offended your sense of logic. You had this sparkle in your eyes when you talked about efficiency. And I thought," he paused, "I thought, this person gets it, gets me. The way I think, the way I work. So you made me your fake wife. So I made you my emergency contact, and maybe subconsciously hoped something would force us into each other's orbits. He stopped walking, turning to face her. 3 years I've been waiting for an excuse, for the right moment, for courage. And then I went and got hit by an Uber driver running a red light. That's one way to make a move. Not my smoothest work. I don't know. Sloane stepped closer. It got my attention. Yeah. She was close enough now to see the flecks of blue in his gray eyes, to smell his cologne. Something woodsy and warm. For the record, I noticed you too. That first week. The reorganization speech? No. Later, when you stayed until 11 p.m. helping me fix a client presentation because I'd accidentally deleted half the slides. You could have let me fail. Could have been annoyed. Instead, you ordered pizza and made terrible jokes about PowerPoint templates until I stopped panicking. Garrett's hand came up, hesitant, giving her time to pull away. His fingers brushed her cheek. Sloane, this is a terrible idea, she whispered. Absolutely terrible, he agreed. We work together. Every single day. People are already gossiping. Let them. I'm scared, she admitted. Me too. His thumb traced her jawline. But I'm more scared of walking away and spending the rest of my life wondering what if. That's unfairly romantic for someone who's afraid of pigeons. He laughed, soft and low. Can I kiss you? You're asking permission? How very HR compliant of you. Sloane. Yes, she said. Yes, you can kiss me. He did, and the world narrowed to this. His mouth on hers. Gentle at first, then deeper. His hand sliding into her hair, her fingers gripping his shirt. The sound of the river and distant music and her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Garrett rested his forehead against hers. So, he said, voice rough, how's the trial basis going? Sloane laughed breathlessly. I think we might need more data. Scientific method. I respect that. Kiss me again and we'll see. He did. Multiple times. Until they were both grinning like idiots and a passing jogger told them to get a room. Garrett drove her home at midnight, their hands intertwined on the center console. When he walked her to her door, he kissed her again, slow and sweet and promising. Second date? He asked against her lips. Presumptuous. Hopeful. Sunday brunch, she decided. But you're buying, and we're not going anywhere the office people hang out. Deal. He kissed her forehead. Good night, Sloane. Good night, Garrett. She watched him walk to his car, watched him drive away, then floated into her apartment in a daze. Her phone buzzed almost immediately. Garrett, just so we're clear, that was the best first date I've ever had. Sloane, just so we're clear, you're still not allowed to call me wife. Garrett, yet. Sloane, impossible. Garrett, you keep saying that like it's a bad thing. She fell asleep smiling, her lips still tingling, her heart doing complicated gymnastics in her chest. Monday was going to be interesting. Very interesting indeed. Monday morning arrived like a reckoning. Sloane stood outside Callahan & Associates at 8:15 a.m., clutching her coffee like a lifeline and trying to remember how to act like a normal person who definitely hadn't spent all weekend thinking about her boss's mouth. Her phone buzzed. Garrett, you're standing outside the building, aren't you? She looked up. He was watching her from his third-floor office window, phone to his ear, smiling. Sloane, how did you know? Garrett, you do this thing when you're nervous, stand very still. Like if you don't move, the universe won't notice you. Sloane, that's creepy observant. Garrett, 3 years, remember? I notice everything about you. Her stomach flipped. She watched him through the window, watched him lean against his desk, still smiling. Sloane, people are going to know. Garrett, good. Sloane, good. Garrett, come up here, I have a plan. She hesitated for exactly 3 seconds, then walked inside. Garrett's office was all floor-to-ceiling windows and minimalist furniture, the kind of space that screamed successful but approachable. He was waiting by the door when she arrived, and before she could say anything, he pulled her inside and kissed her. Good morning, he said against her lips. That's your plan? She was breathless, dizzy. Kiss me senseless before 8:30 a.m. That's just a bonus. The actual plan involves honesty. Radical concept. He guided her to the couch, the same one where 3 years ago they'd stayed late fixing that presentation. We tell people, today, that we're dating. Sloane's heart hammered. Just like that? Just like that. He took her hand. I already filed the disclosure with HR this morning. Effective immediately, you report to Marcus instead of me. No conflicts of interest, no power dynamics. You filed paperwork at 8 a.m. on a Monday. I may have come in at 6. Garrett, I wanted it done official. So when we tell everyone, there's no question about professionalism. His thumb traced circles on her wrist. Unless you want to keep it secret, I'll understand if... No. The word came out stronger than she expected. No, I don't want to hide this. I'm terrified. Of what? That people will think I slept my way into my job, that they'll treat me differently, that this will ruin everything we've both worked for. Garrett's expression softened. Sloan, you're the best project manager this company has ever had. You earned every promotion, every raise, every bit of respect. People know that. Do they, though? They will. He squeezed her hand. And if anyone says otherwise, they answer to me. Very protective. Very in love with you. Time stopped. The entire world condensed into those 5 words hanging in the air between them. What? Sloan whispered. Garrett's eyes widened slightly, like he hadn't meant to say it. Then his expression settled into something determined. I'm in love with you. Have been for a while, probably. Definitely since the hospital. Maybe since you reorganized my entire filing system and called the old method an offense against logic and human decency. Garrett, you don't have to say it back. I know it's fast. I know we've only had one official date. But I'm 38 years old, Sloan. I know what I want. And I want you. She stared at him. At this man who'd spent 3 years watching her, memorizing her coffee order, keeping her as his emergency contact because some part of him already knew. This man who researched HR policies and filed disclosure forms at 6 in the morning and just casually dropped "I love you" on a Monday before the office even opened. You're insane, she said. I'm aware. And dramatic. Concussion side effects. You're cleared by the doctor. Then I'm just dramatic. He was smiling now, vulnerable and hopeful and terrified all at once. Too much. Way too much. She kissed him, hard. Poured 3 years of watching him across conference tables, staying late on projects, wondering what if into that kiss. When she pulled back, they were both breathing hard. I think I might be falling in love with you too. His entire face lit up. Yeah? Yeah. Which is incredibly inconvenient timing. The best things always are. At 9 a.m., Garrett called an all-staff meeting. The entire office crammed into the main conference room, buzzing with speculation. Jenny from accounting was taking bets. Marcus kept shooting Sloan significant looks. Someone had brought donuts, because apparently public humiliation required carbs. Sloan stood at the back, trying to look casual and probably failing spectacularly. Garrett stood at the front, commanding the room with that easy confidence that made him such a good leader. Thanks for coming on short notice. I'll keep this brief. Is this about the merger rumors? Someone called out. No merger. The company's solid. He paused. This is personal. The room went very quiet. As of this morning, I've filed a relationship disclosure with HR. Garrett's eyes found Sloan's across the room. Sloan Mitchell and I are dating. She now reports to Marcus to avoid any conflict of interest. This doesn't change her role, her responsibilities, or the fact that she's earned every position she holds in this company through hard work and talent. Silence. Then Marcus started clapping. Then someone else joined in. Then the entire room erupted in applause and cheers, and someone, definitely Jenny, yelled, I knew it! Sloan wanted to sink through the floor. Questions? Garrett asked over the noise. Are you actually married? Jenny called out. Because the insurance forms... Not married. Yet. Garrett grinned. That was a paperwork error that turned into the best mistake of my life. More cheers. How long? Marcus asked. Officially? 1 date? Unofficially? Garrett looked at Sloan. About 3 years. I want the whole story, someone shouted. Buy me a beer sometime, Garrett said. Meeting adjourned. Back to work, people. As everyone filed out, chattering excitedly, Marcus grabbed Sloan's arm. You're dating the boss. I'm going to need so many details. Later, she promised. Right now, I need to remember how to breathe. At lunch, Sloan found Garrett on the building's rooftop terrace. Their unofficial hideaway when meetings got too intense or clients too demanding. Hey, she said, sitting beside him on the concrete ledge. Hey, he handed her half his sandwich without asking. Turkey and Swiss, her favorite. Surviving? Barely. Jenny cornered me in the break room and demanded to know if we're getting married. What did you tell her? That she needs to find a new hobby. He laughed. Fair. They ate in comfortable silence, watching Portland spread out below them, all bridges and rivers and distant mountains. Thank you, Sloane said finally, for handling that the way you did, for the HR stuff, for protecting my reputation. You don't need to thank me for basic decency. Still, it means something. She leaned her head on his shoulder. This morning, when you said you loved me, too fast. I know. I panicked. No. She turned to look at him. It was perfect. Terrifying and too soon and completely perfect. Yeah? Yeah. She kissed him softly. I'm not ready to say it back yet. Not because I don't feel it, but because when I do, I want to be sure. I want to mean it with everything I have. Garrett's smile was tender. I can wait. You're very patient for someone who filed HR paperwork at 6 a.m. I contain multitudes. During that evening, Garrett showed up at Sloane's apartment with Thai food and a sheepish expression. I know we said Sunday for our second date, he said when she opened the door. But I missed you. Is that pathetic? Completely. She pulled him inside. Lucky for you, I missed you too. They ate on her couch, much smaller than his, with mismatched throw pillows and a blanket her mom had knitted. Her apartment was chaos compared to his minimalist space. Books everywhere, plants on every surface. A bulletin board covered in post-it notes and sketches and ticket stubs from concerts she'd attended alone. I like it here, Garrett said, looking around. It's very you. It's a mess. It's lived in. Comfortable. He picked up a post-it note from the coffee table. Remember, you are capable of more than you think, but also it's okay to order pizza instead of cooking. Did you write this? Self-care mantras, don't judge. I'm not judging, I'm charmed. He set down the note. Can I ask you something? Always. Why did you stay? 3 years ago, after that first week. I wasn't exactly welcoming. Sloane considered this. You were challenging, demanding, kind of insufferable. Great start. But you were also brilliant. And you saw potential in me that I didn't see in myself. You pushed me to be better. She took his hand. Plus, you made me laugh. Even when you were being difficult, there'd be these moments where you'd say something completely unexpected and I'd think, okay, this guy's interesting. Interesting. High praise from Sloane Mitchell. The highest. He pulled her closer, until she was tucked against his side. I'm glad you stayed. Me too. They watched a movie. One of those action films Garrett loved and Sloane tolerated because watching him get excited about explosions was adorable. Halfway through, she fell asleep with her head on his chest, lulled by his heartbeat and the warmth of his arm around her. When she woke up, the credits were rolling and Garrett was watching her with an expression so soft it made her ache. What? She mumbled, still drowsy. Nothing, just thinking. About? About how I used to spend evenings alone in my apartment working, and now I get to spend them with you. He brushed hair from her face. It's better. This is so much better. Sloane's chest squeezed. Stay tonight? His eyes widened. Sloane, just sleep. I'm not ready for, but I don't want you to leave. I want to fall asleep next to you and wake up with you here. She felt her face heat. Is that weird? It's perfect. He kissed her forehead. I'd love to stay. Sloane lent him a too small t-shirt that barely fit and a pair of pajama pants that were definitely too short. He looked ridiculous and endearing, and she wanted to memorize this exact moment. They brushed their teeth side by side at her tiny bathroom sink, bumping elbows and laughing. She gave him the left side of the bed, the good side, away from the window where morning light came in too bright. Good night, she said, settling under the covers. Good night. Garrett pulled her close, her back to his chest, his arm around her waist. This okay? More than okay. She could feel his smile against her hair. Sloane? Thank you for giving this a chance, for taking a risk on us. Thank you for crashing your car and listing me as your wife. He laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest into her back. Best accident of my life. Second best, she corrected. The best was putting me as your emergency contact 3 years ago. You're right. That was the real beginning, wasn't it? Yeah, she whispered. I think it was. They fell asleep tangled together, her fingers intertwined with his, their breathing synchronizing in the quiet dark. And for the first time in 3 years, Garrett Callahan slept through the night without nightmares, because the person he'd been waiting for was finally, impossibly right there beside him. And Sloan Mitchell dreamed of coffee orders and emergency contacts, and a man who looked at her like she hung the moon. Some paperwork errors, it turned out, were exactly right. 3 weeks into dating Garrett Callahan, Sloan learned several important things. 1, he was a morning person, an actual genuine whistling while making coffee morning person. It was disturbing. 2, he had exactly 14 white button-down shirts, all identical, because decision fatigue is real, Sloan. 3, he talked in his sleep, mostly about spreadsheets and client proposals, but occasionally he'd mumble her name, and her heart would do something complicated and warm. And 4, she was absolutely, irreversibly, catastrophically in love with him, which was why when his brother showed up unannounced at the office on a rainy Thursday afternoon, Sloan knew immediately that this was going to be a problem. She was in the break room, making her 3rd coffee of the day when she heard the commotion, raised voices from the reception area, Marcus saying something about appointments, and then a voice that sounded eerily like Garrett's, but sharper, colder. "I don't need an appointment to see my own brother." Sloan's stomach dropped. She'd heard about Garrett's brother, Connor Callahan, former business partner, current estranged family member. The partnership dissolution 3 years ago had been messy. Garrett never talked about it, but she'd pieced together enough from office whispers and carefully avoided topics. She walked out just in time to see Connor pushing past Marcus toward Garrett's office. He was tall, dark-haired, looked enough like Garrett to be unsettling, but with none of the warmth in his eyes. Garrett emerged from his office, face carefully neutral. "Connor, we need to talk. My office. Now." Garrett's voice was ice. He caught Sloan's eye across the room, something apologetic and tense in his expression, then disappeared inside with his brother. The door slammed. Marcus appeared at Sloan's elbow. "Well, that's not good. What does he want?" "No idea. But last time Connor showed up, Garrett didn't leave his office for 6 hours. Marcus grimaced. "Maybe make some extra coffee. This could be a long afternoon." 2 hours later, Connor stormed out, face red, jaw clenched. He didn't look at anyone, just slammed through the office door hard enough to rattle the windows. Sloan waited 30 seconds, then grabbed 2 cups of coffee and headed to Garrett's office. He was standing at the window, hands in pockets, staring out at the Portland rain. His shoulders were rigid, his entire body radiating tension. "Hey," she said softly, setting the coffee on his desk. "Hey." He didn't turn around. "Want to talk about it?" "Not particularly." "Want me to leave?" That made him turn. His eyes were stormy, tired. "No. Stay. Please." She crossed to him, wrapping her arms around his waist from behind. He was warm and solid and trembling slightly. What did he want? "Money, what he always wants." Garrett's voice was flat. "His startup failed. Again, he's in debt. Thought I might bail him out for old time's sake. And you said no." "I said no." He turned in her arms, pulling her close. "We went through this 3 years ago. I can't keep rescuing him from his own bad decisions. But he's still my brother, and saying no feels like you're abandoning him." Sloan finished softly. "Yeah." He rested his forehead against hers. "He said some things. About me, about us." Her stomach tightened. "What kind of things?" "That I only started dating you because I'm lonely. That I'm using you as a replacement for family. That in 6 months I'll get bored and move on because that's what I do." His arms tightened around her. "He's wrong, Sloan. You know that, right?" "I know." But something in her voice must have wavered, because Garrett pulled back, searching her face. "You believe him?" "No, I just..." She exhaled. "Garrett, we've been together 3 weeks. Officially, that's not long. And what if he's right? What if this is just, I don't know, convenient? Comfortable? Convenient." His voice went very quiet. "That's what you think this is?" "I didn't say that. You implied it." He stepped back, running both hands through his hair. "Sloan, I told you I love you. I filed HR paperwork. I announced it to the entire office." "What part of that says convenient?" "The part where we worked together. The part where I was already in your life, already accessible, already..." She broke off, frustrated. "Your brother just accused you of using me, and I need you to tell me he's wrong. I need you to tell me this is real." "It is real." Garrett's eyes blazed. "You want proof? Fine. I kept you as my emergency contact for 3 years, not because it was convenient, but because even then, some part of me knew you were important. I memorized your coffee order after 1 week. I stayed late helping you not because I had to, but because being around you made the work bearable, made everything bearable. He crossed back to her, cupping her face in both hands. And these past 3 weeks? Waking up next to you, coming home to you, having someone to share dinner with, to laugh with, to just be with. It's not convenient, Sloan. It's everything. You're everything. Sloan's eyes burned. Garrett, my brother is angry and hurt and lashing out. Don't let him poison what we have. I'm scared, she whispered. What if he's right? What if you wake up one day and realize I'm not enough? Not possible. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her nose. You want to know what I'm scared of? I'm scared that I love you too much, too fast, that I'll overwhelm you, that you'll realize you can do so much better than a workaholic consultant with family issues and an irrational fear of birds. She laughed wetly. You're an idiot. I'm your idiot. Yeah. She kissed him, pouring 3 weeks of falling, 3 years of wondering into it. You are. That night, they went back to her apartment. Garrett was quiet during dinner, withdrawn in a way she'd never seen. She gave him space, let him process, until finally he spoke. Connor and I used to be close. Best friends, basically. We built the business together right out of college. He stared at his untouched pad tie. Then he got married, had a kid, started making risky investments without consulting me, nearly bankrupted us. So you dissolved the partnership. I bought him out, offered him a fair price, gave him 6 months' salary to land on his feet. But he saw it as betrayal. Garrett's jaw tightened. His marriage fell apart. His wife left, took their daughter to Seattle, and he blamed me for all of it. Sloan reached across the table, taking his hand. That's not your fault, isn't it? If I'd been more flexible, more willing to take risks, you'd have lost everything. The business, your reputation, your ability to help all the clients who depend on you now. She squeezed his fingers. You made a hard choice, the right choice. That doesn't make you responsible for his failures. He called you a rebound. Garrett finally met her eyes. Said I was filling the family-shaped hole in my life with the first person who showed me attention. And what did you say? I told him you were the best thing that ever happened to me, that he didn't know what he was talking about, that if he ever insulted you again, he'd never set foot in my office. His mouth quirked sadly. Then he left, probably forever this time. Garrett, I know I made the right choice, but it still hurts. She got up, moved to his side of the table and wrapped her arms around him. He buried his face in her shoulder, and she felt him shudder once, twice before steadying. I've got you, she whispered. Whatever happens, I've got you. They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped around each other in her tiny kitchen, while rain drummed against the windows and the world narrowed to just this: comfort, warmth, being there. Later in bed, Garrett pulled her close and said, Thank you. For what? For not running. Connor said some cutting things, and you could have decided it was too much drama, too complicated. But you stayed. Of course I stayed. That's what you do when you... She stopped, heart hammering. Garrett went very still. When you what? Sloan took a breath. This was it. The moment she'd been building toward for 3 weeks. When you love someone. His breath caught. Sloan, I love you, she said, stronger now. I'm in love with you. Have been for a while, probably. Maybe since you stayed late helping me fix that presentation. Maybe since you put me as your emergency contact. Maybe since... He kissed her, deep and thorough and filled with 3 years of waiting. When they broke apart, both breathless, he pressed his forehead to hers. Say it again. I love you, Garrett Callahan. I love you too. So much it scares me sometimes. Good scared or bad scared? The best scared. The kind that means something matters. She kissed him again, softer this time. For the record, you're not using me to fill a hole, you're not a rebound, and in 6 months I'll still be here. Promise? Promise. She settled against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Besides, someone has to make sure you don't get defeated by pigeons. He laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest. Strategically cautious around birds. Whatever you need to tell yourself. Any Friday morning, Sloan woke up to find Garrett already awake, watching her with an expression so tender it made her chest ache. Good morning, she mumbled. Good morning, love. He brushed hair from her face. I've been thinking. Dangerous. Move in with me. She blinked. What? Move in with me, not right away. I know it's fast. but maybe in a few months. Your lease is up in June anyway, and my place is bigger, closer to the office. Garrett, and I hate leaving you at night. Hate waking up in my apartment without you. I want you there. I want your chaos and your post-it notes and your terrible action movies. You're the one who likes action movies. And your plants taking over every surface. I want us to have a home. Together. He took her hand. Too much. Sloane's heart was doing gymnastics. Completely insane. Is that a yes? It's a ask me again in 2 months and we'll see. He grinned. I can work with that. You're impossible. You love me anyway. Yeah, she said, pulling him down for a kiss. I really do. That afternoon, they met Marcus for lunch at their favorite food truck pod. He took one look at them, Garrett's hand in Sloane's, their matching smiles, and groaned. You two are disgustingly happy. Jealous? Sloane teased. Deeply. Jenny from accounting asked me to help with the wedding betting pool. There's a wedding betting pool? Garrett's eyebrows rose. Oh yeah. Current odds have you proposing by New Year's. Marcus grinned. I put $50 on Valentine's Day, more romantic. We've been dating 3 weeks. Sloane protested. 3 weeks officially, 3 years unofficially. Marcus shrugged. Everyone knows your endgame. Garrett squeezed Sloane's hand under the table. Smart money's on Marcus. Don't encourage him. I'm just saying Valentine's Day is lovely, very romantic, great time for... If you finish that sentence, I'm reorganizing your files alphabetically by client middle names. You're terrifying when you're flustered. I learned from the best, she said, glancing at Garrett. He smiled, soft and private and entirely hers. That you did. That night, as they walked home through Portland's evening drizzle, Garrett said, Thank you for yesterday, for handling Connor, for saying what you said. It meant everything. You don't need to thank me. I do, though, because you didn't run. You stayed. You fought for us. He stopped walking, turning to face her on the rainy street. I know we're moving fast. I know people think we're crazy, but I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Me neither. Yeah? Yeah. She stood on tiptoes, kissing him in the rain while cars splashed past and the city hummed around them. You're stuck with me now, Callahan. Best news I've heard all week. They walked the rest of the way home hand in hand, soaking wet and grinning like fools, while somewhere across town Connor Callahan sat alone in his apartment, wondering when his brother had stopped needing him. But that was his story. This one belonged to Garrett and Sloane, and it was just beginning. 3 years of waiting, 3 weeks of falling, and a lifetime ahead of getting it right. 6 months later, on a Friday evening in late spring, Sloane stood in Garrett's, their apartment, surrounded by moving boxes and the organized chaos of combining 2 lives into one. She'd moved in 3 weeks ago, right after her lease ended. The apartment was a beautiful disaster. Her plants claiming every window, his minimalist furniture softened by her colorful throw pillows, their books intermingled on shelves in a system that made sense to absolutely no one but them. It was perfect. Sloane, Garrett called from the bedroom. Have you seen my gray tie, the one with the subtle stripe? You mean the one that looks exactly like your other 7 gray ties? It's different. The stripe is at a 30-degree angle instead of 45. That's not a real thing. It absolutely is. He emerged, half-dressed in suit pants and an undershirt, hair adorably mussed. We have dinner with Marcus and his new girlfriend in an hour, and I specifically want the 30-degree tie. Sloane laughed, crossing to him. You're ridiculous. You love me anyway. He pulled her close, kissing her thoroughly. Besides, you're the one who organized my closet by color gradient last week. It was driving me insane. You had navy next to black, navy next to black. The horror. You're mocking me. I'm adoring you. He kissed her again. There's a difference. She wrapped her arms around his neck, taking a moment to just breathe him in. 6 months of this. 6 months of coming home to each other, of lazy Sunday mornings and late-night takeout, of building something real from that absurd hospital mix-up. What are you thinking? Garrett murmured against her hair. That I'm really happy. Yeah? Yeah. Like stupidly happy. Disgustingly happy. Marcus makes gagging sounds at us happy. He laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest. Same. Now help me find that tie before we're late. It's on the hook behind the bathroom door. Where you always put it. You're a genius. I know. Dinner was at a trendy new restaurant in the Pearl District, the kind of place with Edison bulbs and reclaimed wood and a menu that described everything as artisanal. Marcus's girlfriend Jenna was a graphic designer who laughed at all of Garrett's terrible jokes and immediately bonded with Sloane over their shared love of organization systems. "So," Jenna said over appetizers, "Marcus told me about the legendary hospital incident. Emergency contact turned fake wife turned real girlfriend. That's basically a rom-com." "It's been an adjustment," Sloane admitted, smiling at Garrett across the table. "The office betting pool on our wedding is up to $3,000 now." $3,500, Garrett corrected. "Someone added 500 yesterday." "Who?" "Your mom." Sloane nearly choked on her wine. "My mother is betting on our wedding?" She called the office. Asked Jenny what the current pool was at. "Put money on this Christmas." He grinned. She said, and I quote, "My daughter doesn't do anything halfway, and Garrett seems like the kind of man who won't wait once he's decided." "I can't believe this." "I like your mom," Marcus said. "She gets it." "Jenny from accounting is going to be rich," Jenna observed. "She's got Valentine's Day next year, right?" "Very specific," Marcus confirmed mysteriously. Garrett's hand found Sloane's under the table. She glanced at him. He was smiling that private smile, the one that was just for her. Something fluttered in her chest. "Speaking of weddings," Marcus continued, "my cousin is getting married next month. Big destination thing in Napa. You two should come. It's couples only, super romantic, vineyard ceremony. We'll be there," Garrett said immediately. "You don't even know the date," Sloane pointed out. "Don't care. If it means a weekend away with you, I'm in." Marcus made a gagging sound. "You two are the worst." "You brought us together," Sloane reminded him. "This is your fault. I take full credit. Also, I want to be best man at the wedding." "Bold of you to assume there'll be a wedding," Garrett said lightly. "Please. I've seen the way you look at her. It's disgusting and beautiful and inevitable." Jenna laughed. "He's not wrong. You two have that energy." "What energy?" Sloane asked. "The we're end game and everyone knows it energy. It's very annoying for us single people." She paused. "Well, formerly single, but you get it." Under the table, Garrett squeezed Sloane's hand 3 times. Their code. "I love you." She squeezed back 4 times. "I love you, too." After dinner, Garrett suggested a walk along the waterfront, the same route they'd taken on their first date 6 months ago. The city glittered around them, spring air soft and promising. Cherry blossoms were blooming late this year, petals drifting across the path like snow. "Remember this spot?" Garrett asked, stopping where they'd had their first kiss. "How could I forget? A jogger told us to get a room." "Best advice we ever ignored." He pulled her close. "Sloane, can I ask you something?" "Always." "Are you happy? Living together, the office dynamic, all of it, really happy?" She looked up at him, at this man who'd been her boss, her emergency contact, her accidental fake husband, and now the person she came home to every night. "I'm happier than I ever thought possible." "Yeah? Yeah, you?" "Happiest I've ever been." He took a breath. "Which is why I have to tell you something." Her heart skipped. "Okay. Connor called yesterday." Sloane stiffened slightly. They hadn't talked about his brother since that awful day in the office 6 months ago. "What did he want?" "To apologize. He's been in therapy, working through stuff. He wanted me to know that what he said about you, about us, was wrong. That he was projecting his own failures and jealousy onto our relationship." "Wow, that's actually really mature of him." He asked if we could get coffee sometime, start over. Garrett's eyes searched hers. "I wanted to check with you first. After what he said, Garrett," she took his face in her hands, "he's your brother. If you want to rebuild that relationship, I support you. Completely. Even after, people say things when they're hurting. What matters is that he's getting help, that he's trying." She smiled. "Besides, I'm secure enough in us to handle a little family drama." "I love you," he said fiercely. "Have I mentioned that today?" "Only 3 times. You're slipping. Unacceptable." He kissed her. "I love you. I love you. I love you. Better." She laughed against his mouth. "So when are you meeting him?" "Tuesday. Coffee shop near his place." He paused. Would you want to come? Not to the first meeting, but maybe the second one?" "I think he'd like to apologize to you directly." "If you want me there, I'm there. I want you everywhere," he said softly. "Always." They walked further along the river, wrapped around each other, talking about nothing and everything. Marcus's wedding invitation, the new project at work, whether they should get a cat. Sloane was firmly in the yes camp. Garrett was reconsidering his stance on small animals. A cat wouldn't fly at me, he reasoned. That's a point in their favor. You're seriously still afraid of birds. Strategically cautious. We saw a pigeon last week and you crossed the street. It had a look in its eye, a malevolent look. She was laughing now, that full-body laugh he loved. You're impossible. You say that a lot, because it's true a lot. Can I tell you something crazy? Sloane said eventually. Always. Sometimes I think about that night in the hospital. If you hadn't crashed your car, if I hadn't been your emergency contact, would we have ever figured this out? Yes, Garrett said immediately. Maybe not that night, maybe not that way, but eventually, absolutely. You were always going to be my person, Sloane. The universe just gave us a push. Through insurance fraud. The universe works in mysterious ways. She laughed, leaning into him. I'm glad we didn't wait longer. Me too. He stopped walking suddenly. Actually, speaking of not waiting, Garrett? He was fumbling in his jacket pocket, looking nervous in a way she'd never seen. His hands were actually shaking. Are you okay? She asked, concerned. This wasn't how I planned it. I had this whole elaborate thing worked out for Marcus's cousin's wedding next month. Vineyard sunset, string quartet, photographer hidden in the vines to capture the moment. I even bought a new suit. Sloane's heart stopped. Garrett, but then I realized something tonight. At dinner, watching you laugh with Marcus and Jenna, walking here talking about Connor, about cats, about our future like it's this beautiful certain thing. He pulled out a small velvet box. I don't want to wait another month. I don't want some perfect orchestrated moment. Garrett, her voice cracked. I want this. Right here. Where we had our first kiss, where everything started. He opened the box, revealing a simple, perfect ring. Platinum band with a single diamond that caught the riverside lights and the pink glow of cherry blossoms. Sloane Mitchell, 6 months ago I accidentally made you my fake wife. Will you do me the honor of becoming my real one? Tears were already streaming down her face. That's the worst proposal line ever, she said through tears. Is it working? Yes, you impossible, ridiculous, perfect man. Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, yes, 1,000 times, yes. He slid the ring on her finger. Perfect fit, of course, because Garrett Callahan was nothing if not thorough. And then he was kissing her, and she was crying happy tears, and somewhere a street musician started playing something romantic, and they both started laughing. I love you, he said against her lips. My fake wife. My real fiancé. My everything. I love you too. My emergency contact. My accidental husband. My forever. How did you know the size? She asked when she could breathe again, staring at the ring that fit like it was made for her. Your mom. My... What? I called her 2 months ago. Asked for her blessing and also her help with ring sizing. She mailed me one of your old rings. He grinned. She also made me promise to record the proposal. But I forgot, so you'll have to help me lie about that. You asked my mom 2 months ago. I knew 3 years ago, Sloane. The ring was just a formality. She kissed him again, deeper this time, pouring everything she felt into it. When they broke apart, both breathless and grinning like idiots, a small crowd had gathered. Someone started clapping. She said yes, an elderly woman called out. I told you she would, Harold. Congratulations, someone else shouted. Garrett laughed, waving at their impromptu audience. Thanks, everyone. Best night of my life. Second best, Sloane corrected, still staring at her ring. The hospital was the real beginning. You're right. He kissed her forehead. That was the night everything changed. They called Marcus from the waterfront. He answered on the first ring. Did you do it? No greeting, just immediate interrogation. How did you? Garrett started. You asked for restaurant recommendations. You were nervous all through dinner. You kept checking your jacket pocket like it contained nuclear codes. I'm not an idiot. A pause. So? Did she say yes? She said yes, Garrett confirmed, grinning at Sloane. Yes. Jenna, I told you. Valentine's Day bet is mine. Sounds of celebration in the background. Wait, you proposed tonight? But I thought you were waiting for my cousin's wedding. Changed my mind, couldn't wait. You're both disasters. I love you. Congratulations. Can I tell people? Go ahead. Jenny's going to lose her mind. Oh, I'm calling her right now. This is going to be amazing. After they hung up, Sloane looked at her ring. This tangible, sparkling proof that her life had become a rom-com she'd never auditioned for but somehow starred in anyway. "What are you thinking?" Garrett asked. "That I need to update my emergency contact information." He laughed. "What? You're still my emergency contact, but now I should probably list you as fiancé instead of boss. Very practical. This is why I'm marrying you. That and my exceptional organizational skills. And your exceptional everything else." He pulled her close. "And come on, let's go home and call your mom before Marcus does. She's going to cry. Good tears or bad tears? The best tears." She took his hand, their fingers intertwining naturally. "Home," she repeated, loving how that word sounded. Their home, their life, their future. They spent the next hour on the phone. First Sloane's mom, who did indeed cry, happy tears, and immediately started planning. Then Garrett's mom in Dublin, who screamed so loud they had to hold the phone away from their ears. Then a group call with Sloane's college friends who demanded every detail and threatened bodily harm if they weren't all bridesmaids. By the time they collapsed on their couch, it was past midnight, and Sloane's face hurt from smiling. "That was exhausting," she said, curling into Garrett's side. "Worth it, though." "Completely." She held up her hand, watching the ring catch the light. "I still can't believe this is real." "Believe it." He kissed her temple. "You're stuck with me now, Mitchell. Soon to be Callahan. You're taking my name? Well, I've been Mrs. Callahan in hospital records for 3.5 years. Might as well make it official." She paused. "Unless you want me to keep Mitchell or hyphenate? I want whatever makes you happy. Though I'll admit, the idea of you actually being Mrs. Callahan after all this time is pretty perfect." "Mitchell Callahan," she decided. "Professional compromise, best of both worlds." "Works for me," he yawned. "Bed? In a minute. I'm not ready to end this day yet." They sat in comfortable silence, wrapped around each other, the city quiet outside their windows. Sloane thought about everything that had led to this moment. 3 years of almosts, 6 months of figuring it out, one perfect proposal by the river. "Hey," Garrett said softly. "You okay?" "More than okay. Just thinking about how different my life is now compared to a year ago." "Good different or scary different?" "The best different." She turned to face him fully. "A year ago, you were just my boss, this intense, brilliant, slightly terrifying person I worked for. I had no idea you noticed me beyond my project management skills." "I noticed everything," he said quietly. "The way you organized your desk, how you always brought extra coffee for the team. That you stayed late not because you had to, but because you cared about getting it right. I noticed all of it. Why didn't you say anything? Fear, mostly. You worked for me. It felt inappropriate, and I figured you saw me as just another boss. Never imagined you might feel the same way. I did, though, for longer than I want to admit." She smiled. "There was this moment, about a year in, when you stayed late helping me fix that Jameson account presentation. You ordered pizza and made terrible jokes about PowerPoint templates, and I remember thinking, I could fall for this man so easily. What stopped you? Same thing that stopped you. Fear, professionalism, the certainty that someone like you would never look at someone like me that way." "Someone like you," he repeated incredulously. "Sloane, you're brilliant, funny, kind, organized to a degree that should be studied by scientists. You make the chaos make sense. I was gone for you long before I had the courage to admit it. We wasted a lot of time being scared, but we got here eventually. That's what matters." Monday morning, they walked into Callahan and Associates together, Sloane's ring catching the light every time she moved her hand. She'd tried to be subtle about it, but within 17 minutes, Jenny from accounting had spotted it and screamed loud enough to wake the dead. "I knew it. Wait, when did he propose?" "Friday night," Sloane admitted. "Friday, but I bet Valentine's Day." Jenny looked genuinely distraught. "Who had Friday?" "No one," Marcus said, appearing with coffee and a massive grin. "Because Garrett went off script, which means the entire betting pool rolls over to the wedding date pool." "There's a wedding date pool?" Garrett asked. "Obviously. Current odds favor next spring. Garden ceremony, outdoor reception, very romantic. We haven't even discussed dates yet." "That's what makes it exciting," Jenny said. "Also, congratulations. You two are disgustingly perfect together, and I'm very happy for you." The rest of the day was a blur of congratulations, hugs, and approximately 47 people asking to see the ring. By lunch, someone had ordered a cake. By 3 p.m., there were flowers on Sloane's desk from 3 different clients. By 5 p.m., she was exhausted and happy and slightly overwhelmed. She found Garrett in his office, tie loosened, looking equally drained but grinning. "Surviving?" she asked. "Barely. 3 different people asked me about color schemes. I don't even know what that means." She crossed to him, settling in his lap. "We could elope. Don't tempt me." He wrapped his arms around her. "But your mom would kill us, and Jenny would never forgive us for ruining her betting pool." Fair points. They sat in comfortable silence, watching Portland spread out below them through the floor-to-ceiling windows. "Hey," Garrett said softly, "remember 3 years ago, when you reorganized my filing system and I knew you were going to be important? I remember you being annoyed. I was terrified because I knew even then that you were going to change everything." He kissed her temple. "Best decision I ever made, putting you as my emergency contact. Best accident I ever answered," she corrected. "We make a good team. The best." "So," he said carefully, "have you thought about when you want to do this? The wedding? Honestly, I don't want to wait a year. Life's too short and I'm too impatient. What are you thinking? This fall? October maybe? The leaves would be beautiful, weather's still nice, gives us 6 months to plan." Garrett's smile was brilliant. "October works. Small or big? Medium? Close friends and family. Somewhere outdoors. Nothing too formal. I love you," he said simply. "I love you too, even though you're going to make me deal with color schemes. That's what wedding planners are for. Look at you, being practical. I learned from the best." That night they celebrated with takeout pad thai and cheap champagne in their living room, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes and the beautiful chaos of building a life together. "To us," Garrett said, raising his glass. "To hospital calls at 3 a.m., insurance fraud, and the best paperwork error ever made. To emergency contacts," Sloane added. "To 3 years of not knowing, and to everything that comes next." They clinked glasses, drank, and then Garrett was pulling her close, kissing her like she was air and he'd been drowning. "I can't wait to marry you," he said against her lips. "October 13th, she said. "We picked a date." "We did," he confirmed, grinning. "Think anyone will believe our story at the wedding?" "Absolutely not. It's too ridiculous to be real." And yet, he gestured to her ring, to the apartment around them, to the life they'd built from a bureaucratic accident and 3 years of almosts. Here we are, she echoed, smiling so wide her face hurt. "My fake husband. Soon to be real husband. In exactly," he checked his phone, "173 days. You're counting, obviously. I've been waiting 3 years. What's a few more months? The most organized wedding planning in history, apparently. You're marrying a consultant, babe. Everything's going to be color-coded and spreadsheet tracked. Promises, promises." And as they kissed, surrounded by moving boxes and takeout containers, with the city lights of Portland glittering through their windows, Sloane thought about that call 6 months ago. That terrifying, ridiculous, life-changing 3 a.m. phone call. She'd been so scared answering it, so convinced something terrible had happened. And in a way, something had. Her carefully organized, completely planned, totally manageable life had exploded into beautiful chaos. Into late-night dinners and morning coffee, and someone who memorized her quirks and loved her anyway. Into a man who put her as his emergency contact because some part of him already knew she'd always show up. Into love. Real, messy, perfect love. "What are you thinking?" Garrett asked, pulling back slightly. "That I'm glad you crashed your car," he laughed. "That's slightly concerning. You know what I mean. I'm glad the universe pushed us. I'm glad you forgot to fix the paperwork. I'm glad for all of it, even the scary parts." "Me too," he said softly. "All of it. Every ridiculous, impossible bit. Do you think we would have figured it out eventually? Without the accident? I know we would have. Maybe it would have taken longer. Maybe we'd have danced around it for another year or two. But eventually," he kissed her softly. "You were always going to be my person, Sloane. I was just too scared to believe someone like you could want someone like me. That's my line. Great minds. Or terrified hearts. That too." Outside, Portland hummed with its usual evening energy. Inside, Garrett and Sloane built their future, one moment at a time. One kiss, one laugh, one shared dream. And somewhere in a hospital records database, Sloane Mitchell was still listed as Mrs. Callahan, emergency contact for Garrett Callahan. In 173 days, that paperwork error would finally be accurate. But even if it hadn't been, even if the universe hadn't intervened, they would have found their way here eventually. Because some people are meant to be emergency contacts, and some emergency contacts are meant to be forever. 5 months later, on a perfect October afternoon, Sloane Mitchell Callahan stood in a vineyard outside Portland, wearing a simple white dress and holding a bouquet of late-season wildflowers. Across from her, Garrett Callahan wore his best suit, the one he'd bought for the proposal he never used, and looked at her like she'd hung every star in the sky. Marcus stood beside him as best man, grinning. Sloane's college friends flanked her as bridesmaids, all wearing the burgundy dresses she'd agonized over for weeks. In the front row, Sloane's mom dabbed at her eyes. Garrett's mom had flown in from Dublin, and Connor Callahan, slowly rebuilding his relationship with his brother, smiled and raised his glass in a quiet toast of approval. The officiant cleared her throat. "We're gathered here today for a wedding that started oddly enough, with a car accident and a paperwork error." Laughter rippled through the crowd. 3.5 years ago, Garrett Callahan accidentally listed Sloane Mitchell as his emergency contact and forgot to change it. 6 months ago, that mistake led to a 3 a.m. phone call, a hospital visit in cat pajamas, and the beginning of something extraordinary. Today, we're here to make official what their hearts already knew. More laughter, some sniffles. "Garrett, your vows." He took Sloane's hands, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "Sloane, 3 years ago I put you as my emergency contact because I was scared and alone, and you were efficient. Today I'm standing here because you're my best friend, my partner, my home. You make chaos make sense. You see the best in me even when I can't see it myself. You showed up at a hospital at 3 a.m. in cat pajamas because I needed you, and you've been showing up every day since. I promise to always show up for you too, to be your emergency contact in every sense of the word. To love you through every disaster, celebrate every victory, and reorganize every filing system together. I love you. I choose you. Today and every day after." Sloane was crying openly now, not bothering to hide it. "That's not fair. How am I supposed to follow that?" The crowd laughed again. "Garrett Callahan, you terrified me for 3 years. This brilliant, intense, demanding boss who I was absolutely not supposed to fall for. But then you stayed late helping me fix presentations. You memorized my coffee order after 1 week. You put me as your emergency contact because somewhere, deep down, you already knew. And when I got that call at 3 a.m., I was so scared. And then I saw you, and everything clicked into place. You're my person, my forever emergency contact, my home. I promise to always answer when you call, to reorganize your closet by color gradient, to love you through every spreadsheet, every project, every single day, even when you're afraid of pigeons." Garrett laughed, tears streaming down his face. "Strategically cautious. Whatever you need to tell yourself, babe." The officiant smiled. "By the power vested in me by the state of Oregon, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." And Garrett did, dipping Sloane back in a kiss that made the crowd cheer and Marcus whistle obnoxiously, and Jenny from accounting yell, "I called it," from the third row. When they broke apart, both grinning like fools, the officiant added, "Ladies and gentlemen, for the first time officially, though not for the first time in hospital records, Mr. and Mrs. Callahan." More cheers, more laughter, more love than Sloane had ever thought possible. At the reception, Marcus gave his best man speech. 3.5 years ago, Garrett Callahan made a mistake. He put his project manager as his emergency contact instead of fixing his paperwork. 6 months ago, that mistake turned into the best thing that ever happened to him. Today, we're celebrating because sometimes the universe knows what we need before we do. Sometimes accidents are exactly right. Sometimes the person you've been waiting for is already there, just waiting for you to notice. He raised his glass. To Garrett and Sloane, the only couple I know who turned insurance fraud into true love. May you always be each other's emergency contact. May you never stop reorganizing each other's lives. And may you have a lifetime of cat pajamas, pad thai, and 3 a.m. adventures. Cheers. The crowd echoed, cheers. Garrett pulled Sloane onto the dance floor for their first dance. The song was At Last, her choice because she was a romantic and he loved her for it. "Mrs. Callahan," he murmured as they swayed together. "Mr. Mitchell Callahan," she corrected, smiling. "My fake wife. Your real wife now." "Finally," he kissed her softly. "Worth the wait? Every single second." And as they danced under string lights and October stars, surrounded by everyone they loved, Sloane thought about all the moments that led here. The hospital call, the first kiss, the I love yous, the proposal, every terrifying, beautiful, impossible step. Some stories end with happily ever after. This one ended with, "Mrs. Callahan, your husband is on line 1. And really, what could be more perfect than that? The end.